Hello, and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 5, Episode 11. Today is Sunday, February the 25th, 2018. My name is Graham Perro. That over there is Melissa Daphne, and that over there is Tyler Fitch. And we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about this week. A few games to get to, but before that, we have all kinds of news to talk about. So, first of all, we had a couple of comments on last week's show that I want to briefly address to start off with. We talked about Mitch Belisle talking about a buzzer beater last week and how it would count if it left the stick before time ran out, which we decided was wrong. And we were surprised that Belisle got that wrong because it's not a rule in the NLL or the MLL, and we weren't sure it was a rule anywhere. It turns out Evan Schemenauer mentioned that it is a rule in the NCAA. So that must be where Belisle was thinking about it. Like I said, I'm still surprised he got it wrong because he played in the NLL for a bunch of years. But I imagine if you're playing in several different leagues, even if it's not at the same time, perhaps you get the rules kind of confused. So just to clarify, it is a rule in a lacrosse league at least, just not this one. Another comment was I mentioned that Corey Small was the captain of the Shamrocks, and he would be leaving the Shamrocks this summer and playing out east. And we got a comment on YouTube saying, "What are you talking about? The Shamrocks aren't a team." So I probably neglected to say that I was talking about the Victoria Shamrocks of the WLA, not the Chicago Shamrocks of the NLL, and they did indeed fold up shop after the 2008 season. So my apologies for the misunderstanding there. Yeah, so I guess that's it for the comments. News. We had a trade. We haven't had too many of those this season, but there was one this past week. Johnny Paulus was sent from the Georgia Swarm to the New England Black Wolves. The Swarm received, guess what? Draft picks. They love draft picks in Georgia. So they got a second-round pick next year and a third-round pick in 2020. And I think this is a great trade for probably for both teams. Definitely for Georgia because Paulus had only played a handful of games. He was a healthy scratch in the previous game. And with the expansion draft coming, they're going to have to try and whittle down who they're going to protect. And it's not unlikely that Paulus may not have made that list. So instead of just losing him, now they got a couple draft picks for him. So not so bad. New England now gets a lefty who, if he returns to the way he used to play, he's not having a great season this year, but has had some outstanding seasons in the past. And if he returns to that, then they get a great lefty for a couple of draft picks. So not bad. Any thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, he obviously is an avid listener to our podcast. Heard what I said last week about being the fourth best forward on his team, and then came into Vancouver and scored 3 goals, including the game winner. So on Johnny Paulus. And also it's obvious that somebody in charge of both the Swarm and Black Wolves are listeners as well, because they said, oh yeah, like he's the fourth best person, he's got traded, we can get him. And so they went and got him. So I'm happy that our listeners, not our readers, but our listeners are taking advantage of the information that we provide.
I just can't even follow that up.
All right. I guess we'll get to the sad news of the week next. And this was announced earlier this week. Former Bandits, Swarm, Lumberjacks, and Mammoth defender and tough guy Ray Guzet passed away this past week. I don't have any idea how old he was, but he couldn't have been that old. But
he's 42 or 43, depending on when his birthday was. One of the screenshots had his birth year, so the math said he was 42 or 43.
So definitely too young. It was an accident he was on vacation in Costa Rica. Ray played in the NLL from 2003 to 2009. And I don't actually really know anything about him. But just looking at his points, he accumulated 14 points in those 6 years. So I assumed he was a defender, and 195 penalty minutes. So I assumed he was a tough guy. And he played for both of your teams at some point. So do you have any memories of Mr. Guzay?
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, I was taught not to say anything if you don't have to say anything nice, and I wasn't fond of him when he was on the Mammoth or when we played against him. So I get the feeling that players who played with him liked him, and that was great, but fans really never got to know him, and what we saw wasn't the most positive view of him as a person.
Yeah, he was absolutely one of the first players that I loved to hate. He's playing for the Lumberjacks. So at that time, I had season tickets in Portland, so I got to see him play like 8 times a year. And then go to San Jose and watch Stealth games, like also playing against the Stealth. And yeah, he was constantly stirring the pot and starting stuff, and the total agitator, in a controlled sense. Like, you see some people take stupid penalties. I think about it, he didn't take stupid penalties. He took aggressive penalties to try to either get his team going or to defend somebody on his team, but they were never stupid. So he wasn't that much of a liability, which is why he got to play for so many teams. Somebody's dad, I want to say like Tyler Codron's dad, was talking about Guzay. He's like, well, like, he's from Surrey. Those Surrey guys are a little. So now I've always had this association that the Surrey neighborhood or city in BC is full of people like Ray Guzay. And then I met that Cliff Smith. He's from Surrey too. So the polar opposites. So I have no idea what's happening in Surrey. But there's a Twitter account of like things that people in Surrey say, which is pretty funny. So it's a wild path that or rabbit hole you can go down. You start researching these things. But yeah, I'm sad to see him go. He's too young. It also made me realize, like, the league is still so young that even like people of old age and natural causes in the league, like, we don't ever hear these announcements. There's a lot of greats and not greats that everybody's still alive. It's very much still a young league. So that's kind of made me something that I was started thinking deeper about with this announcement.
Yeah, it really does say, because those that we have lost have been really serious illness versus, yeah, we don't hear about too many accidents, thankfully.
So we'll move on. Our thoughts are with the Guzay family and friends. Let's go to the Stealth now for some better news, somewhat. A bunch of changes in the Stealth land this week. They fired John Lintz and Jim Milligan as assistant coaches and replaced them with Kevin Alexander on the offense and Art Webster on the defense. I'll get Tyler to talk about these moves in a second, but they made a few more that I actually didn't see announced. At least one of them I didn't see announced. John Harnett was moved to the IR season ending list, so I guess he's done for the year. Draft pick Ryan Fournier, who I think they picked 12th this past year, was released. That was tweeted by Teddy Jenner. And Andrew Suter was signed to a 2-year deal today, I believe. So that, I guess, is good news. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start on the coaching front. Early on in the season, either on here or on Twitter, I don't even remember at this point, I was not a fan of the way the defense was playing, and I put it all on John Lintz, and apparently they have decided to do the same. Offensively, I don't know that it was coaching. There's definitely some aspects of the player styles where none of the players are the kind of people that go to the cage except for Joel McCready. So they're all, kind of shooting from the outside, and they still did it yesterday, but they got 9 goals and they got to overtime, but the defense played so much better that it was enough to get in, to be in the game. And so I didn't see the offense change too much. Reese Dutch had a couple goals where he's been quite quiet all season. So he seems to like the change, maybe. It's tough to read into things off of just one game. But I think it's a positive step, moving in the right direction. There's some comments that is very interesting, like, how do you replace the 2 assistant coaches but not also the head coach? And how much responsibility did he have for the performances? But I think you're not constant answer is who are you going to get that's better. I don't know that there is, but the assistant coaches, they definitely had better alternatives. So they made those moves. Suits for a 2-year deal is pretty impressive. He's also in the last month turned up his game a great deal and scoring goals, forcing transition, helping the stealth. And so it's great to see that. Ryan Fournier, getting cut was a surprise. They brought in a kid from last year, Brendan Fowler, who they're both face-off men, but Fournier has more indoor experience. So I thought they were kind of a wash, but there's something there that they changed. And Fowler had a great game yesterday going against Jay Thornbear. In case anybody's listening who's called that game yesterday and wants to learn the name, it's Thornbear. She did a number on him. I was quite impressed with how that went. And John Harnett to the IR, he's only played like 2 games, so be it. It's a bummer. You wish people were healthy, but it's not like they're losing somebody who's had huge impact all year to this point. So I guess I don't care. All right, that's my thoughts.
All right. One other bit of news, I guess this is a quick one. The Rush are the first team to clinch a playoff spot this February, people. The season is barely half over. They've already clinched a playoff spot. That's pretty impressive. Now, part of that is they are, 9-2? Let me get standings.
They're definitely several games ahead of the rest of the league.
Yeah, they are 9-2, and the Stealth are 1-10. And the fact that there's only 4 teams in that division, and the Stealth are so far behind them, there's no way that that they can catch up. Even if Saskatchewan loses the rest of the season, and Vancouver wins all of theirs, they're still behind. So I imagine the Rush will not take it easy from here on in, knowing that they made the playoffs. I don't think that'll affect them one iota. They still want to win first place in the West, if not first place in the league. And they're obviously well on their way to doing that. But the fact that they've clinched this early in the season, I thought was pretty interesting. And one more bit of news, and this is a bit of a weird one. Troy Cordingley was ejected from the Rochester Buffalo game yesterday, according to at least 2 or 3 different Twitter accounts. Bud Bailey tweeted it. I'm pretty sure Steve Bernal did as well. But I didn't see it in any of the post-game write-ups about the game. So I'm not sure we've ever seen this. Melissa mentioned it earlier, and it like I saw it, and it didn't really occur to me because I watch a lot of baseball, and managers get tossed in baseball games all the time. So it's kind of like, yeah, okay, so he got thrown out, big deal. But then, as Melissa mentioned, this doesn't happen in the NLL, and I don't remember it ever happening in any NLL game that I can think of. So maybe the head coach getting tossed out is I don't know if it's a unique thing or if it's just really rare and we don't remember it. But and I have no idea what might have happened. I don't know if you guys were watching that game. I wasn't.
I watched it and I don't even remember what happened, but I'll admit I was also more listening to it. But I feel like there was another one. Was it maybe Buffalo's previous coach? Was Kilgore rejected from a game? Because I had that just kind of vague, niggling memory, but I can't really put much to it. Do you have any ideas, Tyler?
None. I mean, boy, I realize you've watched a lot of games for the last 12 years, but none of them I can remember a coach being ejected. Maybe, but nothing's clear cut. So it was an oddball situation for sure, but I got no recollection of any specifics.
I imagine if any other coach would have gotten tossed, Darius Kilgore is not a bad guess anyway. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if we can find any other cases of that happening. And on to the games of the week. We had Rochester over Buffalo. We had Saskatchewan over Calgary in a low-scoring pitchers duel. And New England beat Vancouver in overtime, which was an interesting game to watch. On to our awesomes and our not awesomes of the week. And I guess I'll start with the Vancouver game. This was a bit of both. What was awesome was Vancouver kept Sean Evans to no goals and 3 assists. They kept Kevin Crowley to 1 goal and 2 assists, which right there is pretty impressive. Their defense was good. I thought the transition was working really well. The offense was pretty good, and the offense has struggled here and there so far this season, actually. I mean, every part of their game has struggled so far this season, but the offense was pretty good. Eric Penny played great. The not awesome part is after all of that improvement and playing really well, they still lost. And that's kind of been typical for the last few games for Vancouver. They've played, I mean, the first few games of the year, they were pretty much awful. And then they kind of turned it around. They won in Buffalo. And I think that was kind of a turning point in that they've played a lot better since then, but it hasn't shown up in the win column. Like if you play really well and still lose, the standings still show that you lost. They don't care how close it was. So that's really unfortunate for Vancouver in that they've really improved their game, but they still keep losing. So that's kind of awesome and not awesome at the same time. Tyler, what do you have?
Whew, yeah, that was such a great game. I don't know. Seeing New England chip back into that game, the Stealth held the lead the majority of the way, and they played so much better. They had a lot of transition goals, a lot of transition effort that just wasn't there the last few weeks. Eric Penny was phenomenal. Stealth offense was a lot more well-rounded. Like everything looked good. It was sad to see them lose. A specific thing in that game, we're kind of talking about before, was having Coach Art Webster back on the defense. I missed hearing his whistle. It's a thing. Like no matter where you are, you can listen to a game when he's coaching. If there's like 5 seconds left in the shot clock, he'll start whistling, and the players just know you can hear it. Never been in an arena, like whether it's, there's some crappy Stealth games where 1,500 people, you could hear it, but get into a bigger arena with 10,000 people or more, you can hear it. Calgary, you can hear Coach Art whistling, and they have tens of thousands, not tens of, but 12, 13,000. So he's got a gift at whistling, and the correlated part of a defensive system that I've seen be successful. A lot of players on the Stealth are used to it, so it wasn't a major transition, and they did better. I said 9 goals earlier for the Stealth, but they had 11 and they gave up 12. But the key points you touched on of Evans having just 3 assists and Crowley just having just 1 goal. And Crowley loves going home to BC because that's where he's from. He has a huge crowd and putting up big games, and it's just 1 goal. It was late in the 4th. It was kind of a backbreaker for the Stealth. They either tied it up or we're helping them chip away in the lead. But there's hope. They're not technically eliminated from the playoffs yet. They played their best game of the year, maybe even better than the game they won. So I might be onto something here. That was my first awesome was hearing Coach Art whistle and the way the Stealth played. Melissa, what do you got?
So staying along the same lines, my awesome was the Stealth nearly won. It was actually a really good game. They looked well. And, it sucks because they did have the lead for a while there and long enough, and then it goes to overtime. So kind of blew it at the end. A couple mistakes there that were costly. But the point is, and I'm like Tyler said, hey, got to give them some kudos. They nearly won. And unfortunately, like Graham said, it's still a loss, and they need every win they can get right now. But they looked good. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like next week. What else do you have, Graham?
All right, my next one, I'm going to go back east to Buffalo and hit the Rochester-Buffalo game. And the 2 awesomes, I guess it's 3 awesomes basically. And the first 2 are just Joe Resetaritz had 14 points and Kyle Jackson had 9. It's not often you can pick up 9 points and not be the talk of the game because somebody else blew you away. But Resetaritz had 3 goals and 11 assists. And I looked it up. 11 assists has been done. This is the 5th time since 2005. So in the last 18 years, it's only been done 5 times. So that's pretty impressive. Like I said, Kyle Jackson had a great game as well, 5 goals and 4 assists. Cody Jamieson with 7 points. So the Nighthawks offense looks like it's coming together and playing really well. And the weird part is, and I wasn't really sure whether to make this an awesome or just an interesting note, that Dan Dawson basically volunteered to be a healthy scratch. Like, he told the team, do whatever you need to do to make sure that whatever offensive spark we had in the previous game where we beat the Rush continues to happen. And if that means that you sit me, then sit me. And they sat him. And I mean, you can probably count on one hand the number of times Dan Dawson's been a healthy scratch in his entire career, and his career's 15 years or something. So, but it worked. They played really well. Does that mean Dawson is done in the league? That's awfully unlikely. Does it mean he's done as a Nighthawk? Probably also unlikely. But with the expansion draft coming up next year and the trade deadline coming up in about a month, March 19th is a trade deadline, it gives the Nighthawks a bit of flexibility, and they might make a deal for somebody who's desperately looking for some offense and possibly like some veteran leadership, which Dawson provides in spades. So the fact that he's willing to sort of take one for the team and say, sit me out if you don't think, or if you think it'll help, that was kind of awesome. So good job to Dawson. Tyler, you're next.
Yeah, going to stick right on that subject area. And my next awesome is former stealth forward Frank Resterz's little brother, Joe. 14 points, 11 assists. What a great game. The thing I actually looking most forward to, because he's never going to play for the Stealth, I don't have to worry about that, but next year, 2019 World Indoor Lacrosse Championships, Joe's American. So we get Joe and Tom Schreiber and Kieran McCardell. We got some good forwards, which is usually a sore spot. A lot of American defenders kind of will coming into the NLL, but not a ton of productive American forwards have been in the league. Usually it's like just Casey Powell, some Brian Langtree at moments. But we got 3 good scorers right now. And so, yay, Joe, keep up the good work. Next year, I'll be in Langley cheering for you. So good job. Melissa, got any more awesomes?
So this is not as big of an awesome, but the fact that the struggling Roughnecks kept the Saskatchewan Rush to 10 goals. And one of them was an empty netter, so, I mean, truly it was 9. But that's pretty impressive. We've definitely seen this team go really high with the goal scoring, and we know they have a lot of really talented offensive players. So they lost, and it was a pretty solid loss. I mean, 4 goals is pretty big. But keeping the Rush to 10 goals, I'd say that's kind of an awesome win. And we were talking last week, are the Calgary Roughnecks that we saw last week here to stay, or was that a fluke? And they may have lost, but I think they're actually going to be a dangerous team this last half of the season. So that's pretty awesome. What about you, Graham?
I swear we're not putting all these together to one dovetails into the next, but my next awesome was the defense and the goaltending in the Russian Roughnecks game. I originally thought of putting this under the not awesome category, saying that the offense was not awesome, but I decided to spin it and make it a positive thing. Christian Del Bianco only allowed 9 goals, as you said. 1 was an empty netter, while Evan Kirk only allowed 6. Both teams have pretty high-powered offenses, and so for only 16 goals to be scored in the entire game is pretty impressive. Del Bianco had his I meant to look this up, about his 5th straight start. At least 4th straight start. He played 49 minutes in the previous one. I don't know if he actually started that game or not. Looks like he did not, but he's kept all of the teams he's played to under 10 goals in all but one of those games. And he's just looking really good. I think he's been on the awesome list of at least one, if not two or three of us in each of the past 4 shows or something. So good job once again to Christian Del Bianco. Good job to the Rush and Roughnecks defenses, and of course Evan Kirk. Yeah, they all played really well, and keep both of those high-powered offenses to only a handful of goals is pretty impressive. Tyler.
Yeah, one more awesome for me. It was alumni weekend in Buffalo. So if you get to watch their opening ceremonies, along with player introductions, they do alumni introductions. Any player that they can get to be there, they give them a jersey with their old number and call them out and say when they were on the team, like if they were there for like a year or 5 or 20 years, it doesn't matter. They let them on. And I think the specific awesome I'm going to call out is this: organizationally, everybody should do what Buffalo does. Like, they honor their alumni. They have just great fan participation. They let them be wild, and they don't clamp down on the fact that there's beach balls going around. Some places probably like, no, you can't have beach balls, and let them pound on the glass and just go crazy. And they got the same person doing the anthems every week. They do, even though they're not playing team from Canada, they do the Canadian anthem. It's very great. We even got to have a little Darius Kilgore sighting. Like, he kind of, after he finished coaching with them, he kind of like stepped away for a while and dealt with life, and you didn't hear from him at all. But Rich, his brother Rich Kilgore, was still around. I think he's even an assistant right now. But like, they even had Darius. Like, everybody was in a good mood. I was kind of worried for Rochester, because usually when the alumni show up, the players on the team will play scared because they don't want to lose in front of the alumni. Alas, Rochester didn't care themselves, and they came out and put a whooping on them. But it was a good weekend. It was fun to watch the opening ceremonies for bringing out all the alumni. It's a nice thing that they do there. Melissa, any more awesomes for you?
Just kind of tagging on to what you were just saying, I think they mentioned that Billy D. Smith, who now plays for Rochester, was also highlighted in the alumni. So that's definitely not something that you see, even when a player played for a very long time for that team, them kind of highlighted coming back in for the opponent. So that is actually kind of awesome. But other than that, I don't have anything. What about you, Graham?
I want to echo what Tyler said, that the Bandits do a lot of things right, and honoring their alumni like that. I think they do this every year. It's not even just a one-off. Is definitely cool. I think even in previous years, they've actually had a game where they divide the alumni into 2, and they have a game where they're tossing the ball around. And of course, nobody's wearing pads or helmets, and there's no hitting. And I don't think there's even any rules really. So, but it's a lot of fun to watch these guys play. And they did something like that at a Rock game at one point recently as well. I can't remember the details of it, of why they did it, but they did have a bunch of former players come back and kind of toss the ball around, and that was a lot of fun. So it's certainly fun for the fans to see names from the past. It's certainly fun for the players, and a bunch of the players and former players were tweeting and mentioning on social media and stuff that this was a great thing, and they had a lot of fun. They have some of these guys on the broadcast as well, and they talk about what they're doing now and what they remember from when they played. And yeah, it's just a great thing that the Bandits do. So kudos to them. And teams like the Rock and the Nighthawks and the Mammoth, and at least those 3 for sure, Calgary as well, have been around long enough that they have lots of players that they could bring back, lots of players that they could be honoring and celebrating their alumni and their history. And yeah, I would agree. Not enough teams do that. So that's cool that the Bandits did. My next one it's actually my last one. It's kind of neither an awesome nor a not awesome. It's just an interesting point, similar to a previous one I did. I saw a tweet from somebody at the end of the Buffalo-Rochester game saying, "Buffalo's a mystery. Somebody explain it to me." And then I saw another one just a few minutes later saying, Rochester is a mystery. Please explain it to me. And it seemed kind of funny that both teams have had games where they just looked terrible, and other games where they just looked like they were completely in charge. And I mean, it happens to every team, but with those two particularly, it seems like 1 week to the next they can go in either direction, and it's not just they played well but lost. They lost badly, and then the next week they'd kick somebody's ass. So it's odd that they're bouncing back and forth, but I guess it's kind of happening to a lesser extent to everybody in the East, which is why the East is so close. Meanwhile, in the West, we have 1-9-2 team and 1-10. So one half of the league is really close, and no, any three of the 5 Eastern teams could make the playoffs, and you wouldn't really be surprised. In the West, the playoffs are almost set now, halfway through the season. So that's it's not awesome. It's not awesome. It's just interesting. Tyler, do you have any more?
No more awesomes. I guess I'll let Melissa speak up before I start piling on stuff.
Yeah, I don't have any more awesomes either. Granted, we only had 3 games this week, so it's a little harder to come up with a bunch.
All right, Tyler, do you have any not awesomes?
Yeah. I'm gonna, I don't know, trying to find some fine line between sugarcoating it and tearing this guy apart. But the NLL had the Twitter game of the week. They get at least one game in every stadium. So this was the week that they come to Vancouver. Like last week or 2 weeks ago, they made a conscious choice to say, all right, we're going to have the same people do every game. So they pulled Brian Shanahan out of doing all Toronto games and said, you're going on to every game as the color guy. And then the play-by-play will be whoever they had the last couple of weeks. But he was new to the game. He's on the list of people who cannot pronounce names. And I just had a thought now about that as well. But then they go to BC, and they got another guy, his first game ever. Like, I don't know if he's even seen a lacrosse game before. But like, it was his first game ever doing play-by-play announcing. And the thought I just had is, well, maybe they took our feedback that the guy who was in Saskatchewan a week ago or whatever, whoever was doing, it's like, well, if he's getting the names wrong, let's get somebody else. Well, guess what? Same problem. This guy's getting names wrong. Even Shanahan was getting names wrong. He called Kyle Buchanan Corey because he gave a pass to Corey Bomberry, and he was all crossed up, and it just sucked. The reason it sucked is because in the same building you have Jake Elliott and Brad Challoner, the regular stealth people, who've played the game, know the players, arguably the best duo in the league because, I don't know, there's other people who've been in the league quite a while, Buffalo and Rochester, and Andy McNamara does a great job in Toronto. The Calgary guys, like, there are good people out there, but Jumbo and Brad might be the best. Jumbo is a nickname for Jake Elliott because he is a large human being. I look up to him, and I'm 6'2". Like, hey, Jake. But it's they're in the same building doing the radio, and they give the game to a guy who's never called a game before for the NLL featured game. Maybe have that guy do the radio broadcast to get his feet underneath him and get a feeling for the game, and they'll put the good guys on. But no, they don't. It's not all gloom and doom. Theoretically, there's now one more play-by-play announcer in the world who's called a professional lacrosse game than there was on Friday. Like, you got a guy who showed up on Saturday and did it. I can't imagine there's any situation where a guy who does play-by-play for sports and likes sports didn't fall in love with that game and have a good time. And I'm not trying to just tear them apart, but like, thank you for coming out and doing the game. Thank you for growing the game. Like, hopefully there'll be more opportunities for you. Go call BC games. If you're a BC guy and that's why they picked you up, like, they need people to call the BC games. But by golly, NLL, like, it wasn't the guy's fault. It's the NLL's fault. Why are you hiring guys to come in and do the play-by-play who've never called an NLL game before and screw up the names and pisses off their fans? Because here I am pissed off that I know there's other people in the building who are going to do a better job. So NLL, fix it, please. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I can't even understand why they would have done that either, because as we've said on previous podcasts, they do a really good job. As a non-fan, well, I can't say I'm a non-fan because I do enjoy cheering the Stealth on, but at least when they're not playing the Mammoth. But I enjoy listening to those two, just like I do with my home team, because they're awesome to listen to. They're smart, they know the game, they give insight, and even when the South have been losing, they've handled it very professionally. I just can't imagine why you would change that up when you have a solid team in place. I don't understand that. But my actual not awesome is kind of along similar lines, but it was really bad for me when I was watching the Rush replay, because there was a couple times I turned away from the screen only to suddenly have a black screen, because there's no commercials, nothing, just a black screen, and I'm freaking out trying to figure out what happened to my cast or my computer, and oh, just a commercial. Okay, and it happened more than once. So that's my not awesome, because that's just not good user experience. And as we keep talking about, that is important, because as a big fan, I'm going to put up with a whole lot more than new fans. And if you lose the new fans, the league isn't going to grow. So that's my not awesome. What about you, Graham?
I did see parts of the Vancouver game, and honestly, I don't remember the play-by-play guy making a ton of mistakes. I'm sure I just missed them, but like I said, I didn't see the whole game. I did notice a couple of mistakes in the Calgary game, the Calgary Rush game, and it wasn't pronunciation, which was weird, because I did hear the guy say Nick Bilic's name properly. And apparently Bilic is technically correct. He's okay with Bilic, but Bilic is wrong. But in any case, Bilic is what it's supposed to be, and that's what he said. So I was impressed. And then he started talking about Mark Messenger and Eric Kirk. And there was another one which I forget, but he basically just got somebody else's first name with the wrong last name. And so he's not technically pronouncing them wrong. He's just getting the name wrong. So that was less than impressive. But it almost seemed like he did look at the pronunciation guide, whether it was mine or somebody else's, but then just said the names wrong. So people make mistakes. I guess we'll give him a break on that. Another weird thing that that play-by-play guy said was just about every time anybody set a pick, he was pointing out that somebody had set a pick. It wasn't that he was setting a particularly hard one or a particularly well-timed one or well-placed or anything about it. It was just the fact that it was a pick. He was talking about it. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting, except it happens 1,000 times a game. So surely you're not going to tell us about every single one of them, because there's a lot. But he did point out an awful lot of them, which is a little weird. So that's about as close to a not awesome as I have right now. So I'm basically done. Tyler, do you have any more?
Same topic. Yeah, it's because it is pronunciations. Because Jay Thornbear takes a lot of face-offs, and it was this Thornbert. I was like, oh my god.
I've actually been told that Thornbert is correct.
Oh my god, well, what have we been doing wrong though? Maybe I'm an asshole. Maybe it's me. But that's the one that really stuck with me. But that's the one that stuck with me the most. But I don't know, calling out picks like that, like, good, put that guy on the radio so people can understand there are picks happening. Like, we can see the picks. We don't, like you said, if you know what's going on, there's a lot of picks going on. But no more not awesomes. It was just like here's what I was gonna say. This is the pros. The expectation is you get it right, not that it's good enough. Like, it's not good enough if a guy is out there, well, he just kept missing patches. He got to the right spot on the floor every time, but he never catches the ball and shoots. Well, then go send down to practice somewhere else. But yeah, my expectations are high. You pick this guy to be the NLL Game of the Week announcer, I might give you one mistake, but that's it. I don't want any more than that. I can't handle it. Like, my expectations are that high that at the professional level, players and announcers, you get it right. Otherwise, the league looks sad. Okay, that's it.
Okay, I think we will move on to our predictions from last week, and nobody gained any ground on anybody. because Melissa got the Rochester game right. We all got the Calgary-Saskatchewan game right. And Tyler and I got the New England-Vancouver game right. So we're all 2-3 on the week. Sorry, 2-1 on the week, 2 out of 3. So overall, we have Melissa in the lead at 28-16. I'm at 26-18, and Tyler has hit the 500 mark at 22-22. So just for fun, we will reverse things this week, and Tyler can go first on his picks for week 13.
I finally broke even, so I get a pity go first selection. I appreciate that. Interesting travel this weekend. It really sticks out to me. So Colorado at Georgia, not an easy trip to make. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick Georgia. Like, it's not an easy trip to make, but they're at least used to making it compared to the Colorado players. And I think getting Jordan Hall in the lineup a couple weeks ago and the week of practice, like, they looked good, and they're going to look better, and they can beat Colorado at home. Then they have to travel to Toronto. That's going to be hard and not fun. And Toronto is a great team, so I'm going to pick Toronto to win that game. Just keep it simple. Vancouver has Saskatchewan. Sorry, Stealth. Just because the Rush have clinched a playoff spot, I don't think they're going to go on cruise control. Stealth have won in Saskatchewan, and they are hopefully turning things around, but I don't see it happening against Saskatchewan like 1 time out of 10 maybe, but 9 times out of 10 I got to pick a Rush, and that's what I'm doing. And finally, the other travel interesting is Colorado, after being in Georgia, has to go home and play Buffalo. And traveling east to west isn't too bad. It's not like they have to land and then rush to the arena. They can kind of land about when they took off, depending on that, because time zones and all that stuff. It's not that bad. But they have to travel, play on second night. Buffalo's going to be well rested. Even the coach took a quarter off last game, so he's well rested. And I'm going to pick Buffalo to win that game. And then, so if we're going to work our way on the top, I guess Graham gets to go next.
All right, then. The Georgia games were really tough for me this week because they haven't been playing great most of the season. And then they got Jordan Hall back, and they got Chad Tutton back last week, and they played much better. And so is that the swarm that we're going to see from now on, or was that just a one-off because they were excited to have Jordan and Chad back? I don't think it's a one-off. I think they're gradually improving as the season goes on, but they also didn't turn into the swarm from last year and score 19 goals. So I'm going to pick Colorado to go into Georgia and take that game, because I think Colorado has been playing fairly well recently, particularly their defense. And this is something that kind of surprised me about this season, that they lost 2 of their big name defenders in Dan Coates and Cam Holding. And they picked up Scott Carnegie, but he's missed, I don't know, about half the season, but he's missed a number of games due to injury as well. But basically everybody else on the team has stepped up their game in a big way. So their defense has been really good. So I'm going to pick Colorado to pick that to win that game. Then Georgia travels to Toronto, which is kind of like going home for most of the Georgia players anyway. But the fact that they have to actually do the traveling is going to make things difficult. I'm going to go with Toronto for that game. Like I said, we saw a better Georgia team last week, and they barely snuck by the Rock. The Rock will have another week to figure out how they're going to do things without Tom Schreiber. And so I'm going to go with the Rock on that one. Vancouver, Saskatchewan, I'd be surprised to see anybody pick Vancouver to win that game. Is it doable? Sure, but not very likely. I'm going to go with the Rush. And Buffalo, Colorado, another tough one. Buffalo, like we said, is either playing really great or really crappy. And Colorado's been a little more consistent, though I guess they're around the 500 mark as well. But I'm going to pick Colorado to win that as well. And so that'll be a big 2-win weekend for the Mammoth. Melissa, what do you have?
All right. I also found the Colorado games very difficult to pick. Colorado flying into Georgia is not going to be nice, although some of the players have the high altitude advantage going into that sea level. But I just don't know about this Georgia team. I keep wanting to pick them, thinking of last year's team, and then they disappoint me. And so I think Colorado's just playing a little bit better, so I'm going to go with them for the win. And it's a tentative going with them. I could be swayed very easily on that one. But Georgia going back to playing again the next night at Toronto, I think the Rockers is going to be stronger right there. With the rush and the Stealth, yeah. I want to see the Stealth get that next win. I just don't think it's gonna be against this Rush team. The Rush are playing good. And then Buffalo coming to Colorado. It's the 303 game. In fact, Mammoth sent out a thing. They were selling tickets to that game for $3.03 through tonight. So not that this is going to be posted in time, but I think Buffalo's going to spoil it, and they're going to take that win. That's going to be a long travel day, playing back-to-back games. I just think Colorado's going to be at the disadvantage. But therein again, it's which Buffalo team are we going to see? We don't know. But Colorado is not the team that we saw at the beginning of the season. They've definitely had some struggles. I think Buffalo can capitalize on that, especially with them being an entire team, because traveling to Georgia is not nice. I haven't been to Georgia, but I've been to Florida enough times. So, yeah, I think I'm going to pick Buffalo for that one. You want to close this out, Graham?
All right. One question to you, Melissa. You mentioned this is the 303 game. Is that a thing in Colorado? And I mean, it's happening on March 3rd, but I don't know what 303 means.
I guess I should explain that. The main area code is 303. So this is the Colorado game where they're going to have the Colorado jerseys, which I love, and that's actually what I was wearing last weekend. So yeah, it's the 303 game that happens to be on March 3rd. So you get 303. So yeah, it's the Colorado game because it's 303. Okay. So yeah, thank you for asking that, because it's one of those things that you just don't think about. Or not like some states where you have 20 different area codes. We didn't have 3 until probably within the past 10 years. So we're still small.
I guess if Toronto plays a game on April the 16th, it would be the same thing, because that would be the 416, and Toronto is the 416 area code. So, well, Toronto actually has 4 area codes now, but 416 was kind of the original one. But yeah, I've never thought of that. Even if the Rock have played a game on April 16th, it's, to my knowledge, never been known as the 416 or 416 game. But that's an interesting idea. All right, so I guess that will close it out. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.